Hello, I'm Soycat, and Greenland just held an election, and the opposition party actually won. This is a very big deal, given the themes of the campaign, because if you're not familiar, this is Greenland right here, and despite having fewer than 100,000 people living there, there are so many people interested in its future, partially because of the fact that it's hugely strategically important in the soon emerging Arctic Ocean, which is opening up more and more as climate changes leads to more of the ice becoming actually accessible as water, but even more notable is most people care about it because, let's be honest, it's labeled on a map and it's this giant piece of land in the Mercator projection. Here's how big Greenland actually is, but yeah, here's how big the story is. Let's go into it today. So if you aren't familiar with the parties in Greenland, I wouldn't blame you. There are a lot of them, but the biggest one now is the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is a socially liberal party, but also, generally speaking, fairly conservative on the center to center right of the political spectrum. Hey, there we go. It says it right here in Wikipedia. And so what's interesting about this party is the fact that they are one of the many parties in the Greenlandic parliament who have been poising for independence. This therefore seems like it's a big move towards, setting the country on a path towards independence, and that sort of is true, but there's a really important caveat you need to know about that. So first things first is the fact that Greenland going independent right now comes with the strings of, well, Denmark's not selling Greenland to the US like apparently Mr. President there wants, but what is notable is the fact that if Greenland were to go independent, they would immediately be approached with, we could say offers, or we could say maybe less than offers, depending on how you take these words. And so the Democratic Party basically take these independence urges that people have, and they say, how about we go for a slow approach that ends up with independence from Denmark, but not US control. And so the tripling of their score from the 2021 election shows that this is indeed one of the more popular ideas. However, it's worth noting the second place party, the Nalarak Party, actually advocate for a rapid path to independence, and they've doubled their vote showing too. And all of the parties which have traditionally led the Greenlandic parliament, by the way, it's a tiny parliament. They have 31 seats, and of those 31 seats, in general, you can see the kind of social democratic or even full socialist democratic socialist parties. Social democracy and democratic socialism are different things, which is one of those very, very fun things in my opinion. But yeah, the country has for a large time been led by democratic socialists and social democratics. You can see that goes back a very long way, but somewhere in the last 10 years, the idea of independence has started to stop just being this like small goal, but started to be a real thing that parties started to campaign on. This is what led to the huge explosion of the Nalarak and also of the Democrats, which now have usurped the social democratic and democratic socialist parties, which means that now in Greenland there is a big majority in favor of independence. But here's the truth, there always has been. If we're actually leveling ourselves and looking into the goals of the Democratic Socialists, yeah, they actually were the ones who campaigned for Greenland to leave the EEC, the former body of the EU. If we look into them, you can see that in general, they are in favor of, having their own independence. And the same is true for the Siumut party. I'm doing my best with these names, okay? But what's interesting is this party also has basically the exact same, goals and the exact same visions. In general, most parties in Greenland have Greenlandic independence as their goal, with the closest thing to an exception being these guys who are actually Greenlandic unionist parties. Those do exist, but it's a very, very tiny percentage of the overall share in Greenland. So by and large, there is already a majority for Greenlandic independence because there was before, and there was before that, and there has been for a very long time. And so here's the question, will Greenland be edging towards independence? Probably, but what's interesting is actually, despite all of the headlines, I think, these are maybe fair, you could say, from the BBC and DW here, but if you look at Forbes, I feel like this is saying they don't fully back Trump's takeover. Forbes is one of those places where you always hear about rich lists and stuff, and so you assume their reporting must also be great. I have maybe some issues of how it is done in certain ways, but if you actually dive into it, even there, they are like, yeah, the only party which actually favors any closer ties of the US, has got 24.5% of the vote. But realistically, the biggest party is not one that is actually directly in favor of the US. In fact, they're not even in favor of independence anymore. If we dive into what they've actually said about it, they say Greenland needs to stand together at a time of great interest from outside. There is a need for unity, so we'll enter into negotiations with everyone. He's trying to form a coalition because, as you'll know if you follow every Westminster system, the number of seats in the parliament, you need to have half of those number of seats plus one, a majority, so that if everyone voted against you, they still couldn't vote down your agenda. And the basic, everyone outside of your party, I guess I should say, effectively you create a two-party system, but within the multi-party system. And basically that means that the Democrats can either work with the Inuit. I really shouldn't have said Intuit, but the Inuit, these people here, the Democratic Socialists, or they could choose to work with the pro-independence party, or they could choose to work with both the Social Democrats and the pro-unionist parties. They've got like a few options going forwards, or ultimately, if they don't negotiate that well enough, it could be that this guy and his pro-independence party could also negotiate some agreement amongst those. There is going to be that process, and it's going to happen now, but what's notable about this is that, yeah, even though this is a party that has a huge goal for independence, it's worth noting, one, is this is a tiny democracy. 44,000 Greenlanders cast their ballots, or were eligible to cast their ballots. Even fewer would have actually done so. And what's interesting about this is the party who were previously in charge, the Democratic Socialists and the Social Democrats, actually previously were making big moves towards an independence referendum happening in tandem with this election. However, what happened was, this guy made a big renewed pledge for his ownership of Greenland, and so they had to immediately back down from independence and instead stress the need for reforms and cooperation between the governments of Greenland and Denmark. Which ultimately, I can make the argument, if you wanted to, that actually is in the US's interest too. An independent Greenland is a bit of a volatile mess, not just because they should be worried about the US. I think in current days, you have to watch out. You have to watch yourself no matter how allied the US says they are with you. That's an important lesson the world has picked up. But also, Greenland is in the most volatile spot of the world. In terms of like countries that could be invaded by Russia, in general, we talk about the former Soviet bloc. Like, if Belarus falls out of line, they're next. Or if the Baltics weren't in NATO, they wouldn't exist right now. this sort of stuff. Finland jumped into NATO precisely for this reason. But like people look onto Russia's borders for who they could be, who they might decide to invade if you upset them next. But the truth is, were Greenland to be an independent country, they are one of the closest countries to Russia across territory that Russia has very strong control over. Their Arctic fleet is currently the strongest in the entire region, and so as a result, having an independent Greenland would be a spicy situation, not just because they have to watch out for that one country that keeps saying they want to control it, but also because they have to watch out for the other one that's not saying anything right now and is kind of waiting for them. In other words, Greenland, just like Ukraine, would need to have some form of defense guarantee, if not from Denmark itself, then from NATO, and so would Greenland be able to join NATO with an army of, we're talking about in the hundreds at the very max there? The answer is maybe, if Iceland does, but maybe that's also not that likely when we have someone who is specifically out there trying to take ownership over the territory. Why would you offer a security guarantee when you can have the entire thing? That is the interesting question, I guess, that could be asked, and it's what Greenlandic people will have to be working out amongst themselves. But for now, I would say otherwise. Their current situation is probably the one that works best for them. Again, the fact that there is a huge shift in the parliament means there's a huge desire for change, but I would say the current situation isn't ideal. Like, if everyone in Greenland agrees, like, why are we a part of Denmark? This is kind of dumb. I feel that. I think a lot of people feel that way about their political system. But it's gonna be particularly extreme when you're this far away, and also when you are made up of entirely different people groups like the Inuits. But when there is basically nothing in common between you and your country, I could see why that's a crazy thing. Also, yeah, Danish people. I'm jumping into this every time I use air quotes now, apparently. But the interesting thing here is that the situation with Greenland is that everyone agrees they want independence. But right now, is independence more pricey than it's worth? In a time of peace, which we've broadly had between 1990 and the early 2010s, in a time of global peace, or at least Northern Hemisphere peace. You know, global, what do people call it? The global North. In the global North, there has been peace for the last 20 years, and so a lot of independence movements really have simmered up. From Greenland to, you know, Quebec to Catalonia to Scotland. Now is the time to peacefully assert your independence and then deal with the security of it later. But it seems as though that stuff is kind of at its end. I suspect the number of independence movements will slightly go down, as independence isn't just asserting your national identity, as it starts to become a slight security risk. But that's just my theory. I'm just a guy on the internet. I want to do something subversive, by the way. Someone said, I literally read one comment that was like, I really like that you showed the A/B testing of the thumbnails. So how about we do something fun? How about I show you the A/B testing for tomorrow's thumbnail? Which one do you think will do better? I'll leave a top line comment. Actually, I could do a poll on the YouTube channel, maybe. No, I guess I'll put it in the top comment. Well, you're not going to go to the community tab to vote in a poll. I know your attention span isn't that long. But what's interesting is I was also just reading comments, you know. I do now have the first day of data on our ad test, and it is very shockingly interesting. But if we scroll through, you can see that, admittedly, this makes sense that, like, the news that gets the most attention is the news that gets the most negative attention. There are lots of people in here being like, I can't believe what you're saying here. But I wanted to just highlight this one comment from Martin, 5285, who says, Canada joining the EU is the dumbest idea ever, and he says to go get a globe and have a look. He is ignoring the fact that that video was recorded in front of a globe, by the way. Oh, actually, okay, wait. Oh, no, yeah, here we go. Look at that. I have a globe in behind me. He didn't see that, but to be fair, usually there's more maps involved. But what's interesting is he says, yeah, the blue stuff between North America and Europe is water, 10,000 kilometers off it. It's expensive to ship over water, and you need hundreds of ships. Good luck. Fun fact, shipping over water is actually substantially cheaper than shipping over land. The only exception is when you build road or rail, but that is more expensive than just using the ocean, which is free, which is why ports tend to be more built up. You know, there's a reason why the population of the US or the population of Canada is located on the both sides of the country, because being near the ocean is really, really, really important, but I'll leave that aside. But what I thought was interesting is just this little detail where he says it's 10,000 kilometers. Like, I love when people are so angry that they don't even, like, consider the facts, and they're like, yeah, 10,000 kilometers of water, that sounds right. I figured I'd fact check that for you right now. Between Newfoundland and Ireland, it's 3,000 kilometers, but that's not fair. Let's go between the capital of Canada and the capital of the UK, the biggest capital in, you know, real Europe, and that's 5,000 kilometers, most of which isn't ocean. But no, look, let's assume he means Russia. You know, maybe that's what he's going for. So between Moscow and Ottawa, it's only 7,700. So you have to say between Moscow and British Columbia. And even then, you're not there. Between Canada and Europe, you can't find 10,000 kilometers. Maybe between Istanbul? No, there is no way you can find 10,000 kilometers of distance. Unless you maybe, if you go up here. But no, that shortens the distance because of the Arctic. What I'm saying here is there is not 10,000 kilometers of water. I think that this one commenter is lost and confused, and that is maybe thinking that the 10,000 kilometers of ocean is between Canada and Asia, which if we check right here, oh, it's almost exactly true. Yeah, this guy thinks that the EU is China. Yeah, that's fun. Okay, so, you know, Martin and 5285 and the Martins of the world, feel free to leave your comments. Yeah, I like when they're dumb, because they mean I don't have to actually analyze any of my opinions any better, and I can just, you know, I think learning is important, and I like that I don't have to learn when a piece of criticism is silly enough, and so thank you for that. But as always, I hope you'll enjoy this video, because I will see you in the next one. I think I want to do an interesting filler video this week about the idea of countries that are specifically probably going to merge and annex their neighbors, I guess. You know, but annexing your neighbors has become a hot political topic, you know, of the US these days. What countries actually will be doing that? I think that we might be moving to a world where that happens more. So let's talk about who, when, what, why. But for now, second channel, don't care. Might see you tomorrow for this video. And so it's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the background is more like newsy, but do people want newsy from YouTube, or do they want clear YouTube thumbnails, you know? Also, yeah, I should have ended the video when I said second channel, don't care. So second channel, don't care. See you next time.